Welcome to the Enlight Life podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Cousens, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics at the moment, since I myself have been going through the hormonal shifts. And so we're going to be talking about perimenopause and menopause and the many myths and misconceptions that are out there. So, as always, if you've been following me by now, I talk from a very real place, from an undogmatic place, and from a place of really looking at all the different options that are out there. And of course, every option has its pros and cons. But before we go into what are the options to deal with various perimenopause and menopause issues, complaints, and so forth, we really need to look at what is perimenopause and what is menopause. And I really feel that the common message that is out there, especially in the last few years, is this message that perimenopause and menopause is a state of almost disease and that it shouldn't be, and that we need to medicate it with hormones. So let's really back up so that we can understand, why is it that we experience symptoms? And before we talk about symptoms, we also need to understand that not everybody has symptoms. And if not everybody has symptoms, why is that, right? Because there is a good portion of women out there that really and genuinely pretty much breeze through perimenopause and menopause. And that's that, right? And they breeze through it, they feel good, and they come out the other side empowered, well, with still healthy, strong, beautiful bodies. Why is that? Have they won the genetic lottery and those of us that suffer don't, right? What's happening? So that's why we need to first understand what affects our hormones and what actually happens as we go into perimenopause. Now, in the last probably 10, 20, 15 years, we definitely have seen perimenopause happening earlier and earlier for women, which is just another indication that something is off when that happens. Because the natural progression is that as we move through perimenopause and menopause, which are really just names that we have given to completely natural phases of life. So just as we don't go and pathologize, even though some doctors do, but in general, we don't pathologize puberty, right? We don't go, oh, you're going through puberty, and therefore we're going to have to medicate you. Like I said, unfortunately, some doctors do. And in fact, not so uncommon, right? Young girls get given birth control to regulate their period, which is complete nonsense, because birth control does not regulate a single thing, right? If anything, it suppresses and makes hormones happen in a certain way because we are substituting. And we need to understand that whenever we intervene in hormonal functioning with whatever hormone we're taking, we are inevitably messing with nature. So, and when we mess with nature, and especially when we mess with hormones, what does that mean? It means that we are messing with our glandular function, because hormones are produced from our glands, from our glandular system, and it's not just one gland. The glandular system consists of the hypothalamus, which is the master gland, pituitary, heavily involved in hormonal production, pineal gland also indirectly very much linked to hormonal production because it governs the circadian rhythm and also our digestive system to a good degree. And then we move to the thyroid, the thymus, and pancreas, ovaries. So all of these glands are absolutely involved. Every single one of these glands are directly or indirectly linked to hormonal production. And then besides the glandular system, we also have the liver, which is heavily involved in the production of hormones or in the metabolism of hormones. And of course, the adrenal glands, again, also very heavily connected to hormones. So hormones are not just something out there, right? A lot of times we talk about hormones as if hormones are an independent, I don't know, system thing, and as if hormones are just estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, but we seldomly are explained where is the hormonal production coming from, what governs it, and that really when we talk hormonal production, we are talking, once again, glandular system. We're talking about our organs of elimination and detoxification, meaning the liver. Indirectly, the kidneys are also involved because whenever we're talking about the liver, we're also talking about what's happening in the kidneys. We're talking about what's happening, once again, in the adrenal glands. And inevitably, we are also talking about the digestive system and the microbiome. Because yes, hormonal production also is connected to our microbiome. And then, just to kind of widen the understanding and the interconnectivity, hormonal production also is dependent on our immune system. And then, our hormonal production is also connected to our moods and to our mindset, to our feelings, right? Which, of course, reconnects to the health of the endocrine, especially neuroendocrine system, and of course also to the health of our digestive system. So, keep this picture in mind that whenever we are talking hormones, we are inevitably talking about all these systems that I just outlined. And therefore, whenever we want to say that there's a hormonal dysfunction, a hormonal imbalance, we need to inevitably look at, well, where is something off in our digestive system, in our elimination system, in our glandular system, in our nervous system, and then ultimately all interconnected in our mindset and emotional / energetic body. So there's a lot of components, right? And before you get overwhelmed and think, oh my gosh, there's so many things to think about, so I'm not going to think about that, and I'm just going to go with what the doctors say, right? The so-called hormonal specialist, and I'm just going to go with that. Well, so if we go with what the doctors are saying, let's start with what doctors are saying about young women going through puberty, putting them on birth control. Instead of seeing that when young women who are going through puberty, who are in puberty, when they are encountering hormonal imbalances and issues in terms of whether it's acne or painful periods or overabundant periods versus not proper periods, scanty periods, missing periods, what does that mean? It inevitably, so instead of then going, okay, well, let's put you on birth control, we need to really understand that when we go on birth control, we are playing with our hormones, we are manipulating our hormones, but we are not addressing the root cause of these hormonal imbalances, right? And of course, we're doing the same thing in our later years, but I'm going to get to that, right? Because first we want to paint the picture. We want to get a clear idea of what are these hormones, what is the interconnectivity, and why do we need to understand them before we then choose our action, right? Our way of dealing with the issues. So once again, young women who are experiencing hormonal imbalances, instead of going on birth control, we should look at what is their digestive system like, what is their glandular system like, what is their nervous system like, and where are the deficiencies and the imbalances. Because inevitably, even if we put them on birth control, and even if we on the surface resolve their issues, inevitably it goes without saying, we can give a guarantee that at some point, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line, these women that have supposedly resolved their issues on birth control are inevitably going to encounter further issues, and not just hormonal imbalances, but further health issues. Why? Because the original imbalance was not healed, cured, regenerated at the root. Very simple. And of course, the problem is that there isn't a simple answer to hormonal issues, right? But it is, there's so many layers, there's so many things that we need to look at. And at the same time, we can either choose to put our head in the sand and go, oh my gosh, it's all too much for me, so therefore I'm going to avoid and I'm just going to work at the surface, which means later in life you're going to have issues. And in fact, there are enough studies out there that you can go and look at. When women who take birth control are going to inevitably have worse issues in perimenopause and menopause. And that's just one aspect of issues that they're going to have to deal with, right? There's other things, and it's not rocket science. It's simple logic, inference, because when we are not dealing with root causes, when we're not addressing root causes, and we are working with hormones, hormones are very, very powerful. So yeah, and hormones are protective to a degree, right? Which is why when we get older and our hormonal power from the ovaries begin to diminish, that is when kind of our real state of health is revealed to us. And then we experience weaknesses that we may not have had before, and we think, oh, it's the hormones. It's not just the hormones. It's just that the hormones were covering up the weaknesses that were already building up before, but now that the protective power of hormones is no longer there, your weaknesses are going to be accentuated and they're going to be in our faces, and we're going to have to deal with them. And we're going to go deeper into that. But so we've set the stage. What happens when you are in your younger years and you have these hormonal issues? Okay, now you're dragging them with you throughout life, because you're not addressing the digestive system, because we're not addressing the nervous system, because we're not living a lifestyle that is geared towards the feminine rhythms, right? I mean, we all know that we live in a masculine powered reality. And as women, until we do the work to change things around for ourselves, we are dragged into this masculine reality, which doesn't allow us to live according our feminine rhythms, which are very different from the masculine rhythms. But without getting into the sort of, more metaphysical and, if you will, esoteric, which actually is not esoteric in the least, even though we can label it as such, because it's just real life. It's just, how things are. But let's stay with the physical. So now we jump forward, from teenage years, the time when our hormones change, puberty to perimenopause. So first of all, perimenopause is happening in younger and younger women. Why? Not because hormones, right? Hormones are the result of everything else that's going on in the body. We said that. Hormones are the result of the health of your endocrine system. Hormones are the result of the health of your microbiome, of the health of your nervous system, of the health of your eliminatory organs. And so therefore, if we want to take a couple more steps back, hormones, of course, and we know this, hormones are connected to how much toxicity is accumulated in our body, how much exposure, and how well is our body able to handle the various toxins that we're exposed to, meaning how well are they metabolized. And we know that when our body is not good for whatever reason, if our body is not good at metabolizing toxins, heavy metals, xenobiotics, and all the various endocrine disruptors, our endocrine system, right? Endocrine disruptors affecting the endocrine system, affecting our hormones. Now, of course, we can ignore all of that. We can ignore our endocrine system. We can ignore the toxins to a degree. We can ignore the well-functioning of our nervous system, etc. Again, all to a degree. And we can just take hormones and we can move on and kind of live happily ever after. But for how long can we do that? That's the question. So the problem that I have with the current message, the message that has been, that is being punted really strongly in the last few years and that is gaining strength and momentum, is the message that, well, once you hit perimenopause, and actually, ideally, even before you hit perimenopause, and then certainly once you hit menopause, you should be on hormones. And if you're not, you're going to regret it. You're making the biggest mistake of your life because, and hormones are the way to be an empowered woman in today's life, etc., etc. That is a general message. And how do I know? Well, I know because of my personal experience. So even though I, as some of you may know, 10 years ago when I was bedridden, I did all the things, all the drastic things to regenerate my body, to heal my long list of autoimmune issues, etc. And I basically, 4 or 5 years into the process, I reached a point where I was like, wow, I've never felt this good in my life. I definitely felt like I age reversed by 10 years. And I can say I was in the best health of my life. To the point where by then I was about 45. So by the time I was 45, where I really felt like, wow, I've never been this healthy, I genuinely felt that, well, I'm not going to have any hormonal issues going forward because I've done all the things and I live so healthily and I feel so great now. Well, that unfortunately wasn't entirely true, because by the time that I hit 47, somewhere around there, I definitely started to feel certain symptoms that it took me a while to put 2 and 2 together and to realize, these are some hormonal imbalances that are showing themselves. And ultimately, what is happening is that, well, you're entering perimenopause and certain hormonal imbalances are showing themselves. And so because at the time I felt, well, I'm not a hormonal expert, so I felt that it was the right thing to do to, have consults with hormonal experts around the world. And I did have several consults with several well-known, well-renowned hormonal experts, some, YouTube sensations, and some sort of, if you ask around the world, who do you think is one of the best experts in anti-aging and hormonal health, there's a certain name that keeps coming up in Europe. And so, by seeking out the help and expertise of these people, plus a couple more lesser known, I was repeatedly, every single time, I was shocked at the feedback that I was getting, because I was, as a health expert myself, I was seeking to have a genuine kind of peer-to-peer conversation. And the conversation that I wanted to have was, well, look, it's not like I have lived, or I've done nothing for my health. I've really worked very hard at my health. I have overcome all of these issues, and I am now living and have been living a healthy life. Now I'm experiencing these symptoms, which, they weren't major things, but definitely they, enough to make me feel like I'm not optimal anymore. And I wanted to get to the root for my own understanding. But of course, everything that I do is always also, there to inform my way forward with my clients, with others. And so the first kind of letdown was that with none of these experts, I was able to have a peer-to-peer. None of them were willing to have a peer-to-peer conversation. But it was a very much from the top down conversation of, well, I know better, and I don't care what you've done, and this is what you must do. And the answer was always, well, you must go on all of these hormones, and if you don't go on all of these hormones, and that there is no alternative, right? Not even try these things maybe for 6 months, see if there's improvements, and then if you can't get to where you want to be, then resort to hormones, right? Like, to me, that would be a well-balanced approach, and that is the approach that I now have with my clients. But that was not the case. The message was, look, I don't even want to hear what you've done and not done. I know better than you. You need to go on this whole slew of hormones, this whole hormonal cocktail, and we need to monitor you every 3 months. And unless you do this, literally the message was several times, you are going to regret it when you are, in your diapers at 70s. I was like, okay, hang on here, right? Surely we need to look at the fact that there are millions of women that are, or certainly, again, hard to quantify, but there are enough women out there who are not on hormones, and they are living still a healthy, vital life, right? And equally, there are many women on hormones that are not living such a vital life. And all we need to do, and I've done that, all we need to do is go. You can go on to all these various Facebook groups that are about perimenopause and menopause. I think I'm part of at least 3 or 4 of them, totaling at least 100,000 women, if not more. Okay, so not a small sample. And all you need to do is dig for some, put in some search keywords, and you can take polls, you can ask questions, and very soon you're going to see that, yes, many women have positive experiences on hormones, but there are equally plenty of women that have gone onto the hormone train and not gotten benefits, and oftentimes actually had severely detrimental effects. Now, I'm saying this not because I am categorically anti-hormones. I am not. Knowing what I know now, 3 years later, having done a ton of research, having had, many interesting conversations with more open-minded experts and knowledgeable people, I feel like I have a very well-balanced viewpoint now, which is, there is a place for hormones, absolutely. In an ideal world, of course, bioidentical hormones, better than any of the other hormones. But even in some cases, non-bioidentical hormones, even they have their place. So for me, it's not about categorically, absolutely don't touch hormones, there's only the natural way. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that we need to understand, if we need hormones, why do we need them? And before going on to hormones, which are not just risk-free or just with positive outcomes, as much as the books and podcasts and experts, right, that are involved in this movement, yes, when you read the books, when you listen to the podcasts, when you have conversation with the doctors, as I have, they all want to make you believe that there are absolutely no risks. Everything is just roses and unicorns. And that once you get onto the hormones, wow, your life is only better. I wish, but it's not the truth, right? Just as it's not the truth that hormones don't have benefits. The truth is in the middle. And that is the message that I am here to bring you, so that we can choose with true wisdom and with the true understanding that no matter what you choose, there's no guarantees, right? It doesn't mean that either way, okay, now you've solved your issues and you're never going to have issues. No. Life is real. Life with or without hormones both have risks. And both mean that we need to stay attentive and aware and connected to our bodies so that we can take action well in time, instead of going, oh, well, I'm on hormones, or, oh, well, I'm doing all the natural things and therefore I can sit back, relax, not think about my health. It doesn't work that way. So let's talk about, in perimenopause and menopause, what happens that makes you have all of these symptoms, right? And there's a long list of symptoms, from brain fog to achy joints to sleeplessness to hot flashes to night sweats to memory loss and bone loss, right? I'm probably forgetting a few, but the list is long. And is that list just due to the loss of hormones? Or are all those symptoms due to, yes, the loss of hormones highlight or bring those symptoms to the surface? But when those symptoms are there, it's because there is also stuff that's been going on already for years, weakening, that was happening before the hormones started to diminish, or before our ovaries began to diminish. Because the rest of the endocrine system isn't really diminishing. I mean, it does, as everything slows down with age, even though even there we need to ask ourselves, well, is that just the normal process of aging? Or does it speed up for some, depending on how they've lived their life previously, right? And so the latter is the truth. So the truth is, we experience the degree of severity of negative symptoms in perimenopause and menopause depends on how well we have lived before perimenopause and menopause. Because as our ovaries slow down, and it's not that they just switch off, it's not like the press of a button, boom, at a certain point the ovaries kind of switch off and that is that. No, that's not how it works. It's just that the ovaries over time, and for some that happens even in their late 30s, for some it happens in their 40s, right? So it depends at different time. The slowing down starts. And then, of course, the degree differs from person to person, right? Depending on how healthy or not healthy. So when we experience the slowdown in ovarian output, the natural process, what should happen in a healthy and strong body, is that our adrenals should be taking over some of the production of hormones. Equally, when our liver is healthy and strong, our liver will also take over some of that production. And so will or should the brain microbiome, not even take over, but again, when the microbiome is strong, there's going to be more power for the adrenals, for all other systems. But so what I'm getting at is, as our ovaries slow down, when our other systems, the adrenals, the rest of the endocrine system, especially the neuroendocrine system, when our nervous system, when our digestive system, when our liver is weak as well, and then depending on the degree of weakness, we are going to experience more severe symptoms, which then look as if they are only dependent on the hormones. But the hormone is the spark. The hormone is the messenger. But as we have now determined, if you have been following this conversation, surely then we understand that, okay, the hormones are not the real issue, right? They look like they're the issue, but the real issue is endocrine health, organ health, microbiome, nervous system health. So when we experience issues, where's the culprit? We should be worried and put our efforts into strengthening the systems that are weak, right? Equally, when our immune system is weak, and many of us live for many, many, many years, a lifetime, with a weakened immune system. Like, you can live with a weakened immune system. But when our immune system is weak because it is dealing with an onslaught of pathogens that it has never gotten over, every system in the body is going to be weakened, right? Because there is a weight that the body is constantly fighting, carrying. And here we need to understand our body is incredibly adaptive, and it can deal with a lot, right? But at some point, as we get older, the body kind of goes, okay, there's only so much I can carry. So that's where, as the hormonal production diminishes, we then start to have all of these symptoms. And when perimenopause, menopause begins to reveal itself as this nightmare, as it often is for a lot of women, and where they go almost overnight, right? I'm finding myself in this complete and utter shitstorm where I have this long list of symptoms, and the weight gain, and the sleeplessness, and the anxiety, and like, it's just this long list, right? That's when we should listen up and go, okay, sure, we can take hormones for a short amount of time, but we need to then rectify and strengthen all of the systems that are out of place that have led to this moment in time. Because if we just go, okay, you know what, let's just put in the hormones in place, which typically is, some thyroid hormone, some progesterone, some estrogen, a little bit of testosterone, DHEA, pregnenolone, and the list goes on. And then boom, we're done. And here I always encourage you, go look for yourself. Don't take it from me, because these are things like I have looked into. I also, like all people, I am not clutching to natural resolution. I'm like, hey, if we can have, if hormones really are that healthy or that innocuous, sure, give them to me. But by looking into, it's like, okay, sure, if I really need them, I would take them. But it's a little bit like dentures, right? Or not dentures, what's the other one? Implants. Sure, if you have to, right, you can absolutely live a reasonably healthy life, even with fantastic implants, right? I genuinely believe that. But if we can avoid it, like I'd rather do everything in my power to avoid having to the point where I need implants. And then if I'm at the point where, well, I have nowhere to go and I have to get the implants, sure, let's get them, right? It's the same thing with hormones. So hormones should not be our first place of resolution, but rather when we get to the point where we need hormones, really we should go, okay, and our practitioners should go, okay, look, you're at the point where we need hormonal treatments or else. So there's two things. Either we put you on low dose hormones, the lowest dose possible, for 6 months, whilst you address adrenal insufficiency, while you address nutritional deficiencies, because that's another big thing that I haven't addressed yet. Inevitably, when you have hormonal imbalances, no matter how well you think you eat, and we all know, we live in a world where our soils are depleted and all the other arguments of why our, nutrition is not what it could be. So we all need to pay attention, which is why I dislike the arguments of like, oh, you're deficient because you are a vegan or a carnivore, a this, a that. No, trust me. In today's world, in order not to be deficient in something, you have to be really clever, really attentive. You have to do a lot of things. Deficiencies, nobody can have, no matter what the lifestyle is, nobody is accidentally non-deficient in today's world. At least at some point in our lives, we are going to have deficiencies unless we intentionally work at not being deficient. Okay, so it's got nothing to do with this diet or that diet. No matter what your diet of choice is, and every diet again has its pros and cons, but whatever you choose for you, you're going to still have to pay attention. Guaranteed. Maybe not initially, but at some point, you're going to have to pay attention. And definitely, by the time that we are encountering hormonal imbalances, guaranteed there are also nutritional deficiencies. Because if they weren't, you wouldn't experience the glandular weakness, you wouldn't experience the digestive weakness, etc. Right? So again, I'm sharing all of this so that we can start having not just conversations that focus on, the micro issue. We need to see whatever issue we're dealing with on a macro level, because nothing is ever just the hormones or just the thyroid, or the body does not work that way, right? Our body works as in unison. It is one system, and to one degree or another, everything is always affected. So when somebody wants to tell me, as I so often hear, and bless those of you who think that way, but we need to wake up to the fact that, and it's not like I'm sitting here being perfect. I'm not. I am constantly working at the weaknesses, the genetic weaknesses that I have been born with, and we all have them. And I'm working constantly also at some of my epigenetic weaknesses, but without drama, right? By just going, okay, this is what it is, and I need to work at it. And as long as I keep putting one foot in front of the other and doing what is necessary, I may not reach this, hypothetical optimal level, but I'm going to keep myself ahead of the curve. I'm going to keep myself ahead of my weaknesses. And to me, that's really all that is required to live a beautifully healthy, balanced life. For me, that's the goal. The goal is not, some illusory perfection, but it's about, am I aware? Am I aware of all the point of contact? And am I living with awareness? And the reason why I'm saying this is because if we are not aware of the weaknesses that are hiding behind our supposed hormonal imbalances, I am going to shoot myself in the foot. So, for example, if we enter perimenopause or menopause and we, as the hormones dwindle, we discover, ooh, there's bone loss, right? To a degree or another. What is happening? Is it just the hormones? Or is it that the hormones have aggravated the problem that was already there, that had already been chipping away at itself, but now with the loss of hormones or the slowing down of hormones, the problem has been aggravated, but it was there before already. And what is bone loss? What affects bone loss? It's not just hormones, but the majority, the biggest part of bone loss happens through what? Nutritional deficiencies. Even if the hormones slow down, if we were to have so-called perfect nutrition, we wouldn't be suffering bone loss. If our digestive system would be really on point, we wouldn't be suffering bone loss. If our liver would be functioning properly and the eliminatory systems would be functioning properly, which means when elimination is really good, assimilation, utilization is really good, if our adrenals were really strong, if our immune system, we would not be experiencing bone loss. If the only weak point were to be hormones, we would not be experiencing bone loss. And certainly not to a degree that would be noticeable the minute that the hormones diminish, right? So we need to kind of think logically here and put two and two together and go, well, once again, everything is connected. So let's just stay with the bone loss. What affects bone loss? Nutritional deficiencies, huge. Toxicity, which of course, when there's toxicity, there's going to be nutritional deficiencies. When our organs of elimination are not working properly, we are going to experience acidity in the body, which then leads to bone loss. So an overly acidic body due to improper nutrition, right? A nutrition that is too acidic, not enough alkaline, not enough alkalizing foods, too many acidifying foods, medication, some supplements can also create acidity in the body. And then the biggest one, which is always the biggest factor for most of us, yes, there's toxicity and all of that, but really one of the biggest factors for all of us is stress. So when we have lived a stressful lifestyle in our 20s, in our 30s, in our early 40s, right? And we've been running on stress. And this stress is so elusive because, if you would have asked me when I was living a stressful lifestyle, if I were stressed, I would have gone, are you kidding me? No, I'm perfectly fine. I'm coping with it perfectly and I don't even mind. Until, the body starts to give in and then you go, and then you have to change things and the body forces you. And I know many of my clients have gone through the same thing, the same lessons, and they come out the other side and they go, wow, I for decades didn't think that I was stressed until the stress was revealed to me. And then I had to be so humble to go, wow, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, body. I'm sorry, endocrine system. I'm sorry, nervous system, for all that I've put you through. I'm sorry, feminine, for trampling all over you and trying to forge my way forward with the masculine, thinking that that was going to get me anywhere. So those of you that have gone through the process know exactly what I'm talking about. But stress is a main cause for ravaging nutrients in the body. Because when we are stressed, even when we like to be stressed, I lived for 17 years in South Africa, and one of the, I always found it very interesting whenever you asked, mainly women, interestingly enough, when you would ask, you'd meet someone, people that you kind of like knew, acquaintances, right? You met them at the coffee shop or whatever, and you go like, hey, how's life? How are you doing? So hectic. Like the favorite sort of saying was, oh my God, honey, I'm so hectic. Life has been so hectic. And that was almost like a badge of honor to go, yeah, my life's so hectic. And I looked at that and I went, isn't it crazy that we wear that badge, or, hectic, I'm so busy. How many of us use or have used those words as a badge of honor? And of course, when I say, well, my life has been hectic, and it actually doesn't even matter hectic with what, right? Because in the case of now South Africa, most women there, at least, most of the well-to-do people there, we all had household help and all the things. So definitely our life was way less hectic than in many of the Western countries. And yet we still use this badge of honor of, oh, my life is so hectic. So whether your life is hectic because you have, chores to do and a business to run and kids to look after and, or whether it is hectic because you're busy running from the gym to the salon to, your IV appointment to your thigh trimming appointment, it's still hectic, right? Because you're still living a life, or to your shopping spree, or, whatever it is, you're still living life chasing goals, chasing the more all the time. You're not living in a state of relaxed flow and kind of trust in life, right? And when we don't live from a place of from complete trust and flow, and here I want to specify, of course, I'm not saying that we can't have, I don't even like the word goals, but of course, all of us, it's human nature to be on an evolutionary path, right? It is not human nature to stagnate. We all want to evolve. We're all here, born to evolve, to grow, to learn more, to become more. That's our nature. Whether we try or not, whether we live in flow or in that energy of hecticness, you're still in the force of life is such that we're propelled to move forward. But are we doing so from a sense of urginess, clutching, and mistrust, and force? Or are we doing so going like, of course I'm going to evolve. Of course I'm here to grow. Of course I'm here to become more. And I can just lean back and trust all of life, right? That means the life that I like and love, and the life that I don't really like and love, but that is here to grow me and to evolve me. I can trust all of it. And so when I live in a way where I am in the arms of life itself, and I'm allowing myself to be carried forward by this life force, That's when I'm living in flow, kind of as if I'm living in a little boat on a downstream river, and I'm just kind of, bobbing around, enjoying the ride, versus in the boat trying to swim upstream because I think that that's the way. That's the difference. And when I am living a life of full trust of that which I like and trust of that which I don't like, but which is there to grow me, to stop me sometimes so that I can learn some lessons to then propel me forward, right? When I can trust all of life, my hormonal system is going to flow very, very differently. My digestive system, my nervous system, everything is going to flow very differently compared to someone who is constantly in fighting mode. And it doesn't matter what it looks like from the outside, right? Because we've accustomed ourselves to look at, well, what does so and so look like? And then I'm going to deduce their level of health. No, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And there's been some hard lessons for myself around that when I've had clients come to me with six packs and, the most gorgeous bodies, who had autoimmune conditions, cancer, lifelong digestive issues. So we can look impeccable and still not be truly vital. And the reason why I'm saying this is because we need to learn to really just not compare and to just look at this body, to work with this body. So we're going to wrap things up here. Back to the hormones, right? So when you are experiencing these hormonal imbalances, you need to simply stop and really genuinely analyze where in your life are you not taking care of your true self? What is out of order? And there's some physical things that need to be addressed, right? And oftentimes we need to detox the liver, detox and then regenerate the liver. We need to work with enzyme flushes to support the body in eliminating years of built up toxicity, because nutrition alone is not going to do it, or just at a too slow of a rate. We need to up our nutritional game so that we are really nutrifying our body in a more ideal way, not perfect, but more ideal way, to avoid deficiencies. And we need to look at really regenerating our neuroendocrine and endocrine system. So it is about then looking at all the pieces, and to do so not from a place of overwhelm, urgency, even though, of course, I know very well, that when you're in the hormonal shitstorm, there is a sense of urgency. But from a place of, okay, wow, my incredible body is speaking to me. And this is what I find, genuinely so beautiful. Of course, there were also times when I found it incredibly annoying. Okay, I want to be honest. When it first hit me, I was like, oh my God, I just spent years healing, regenerating, fasting, blah, blah, blah. And now here we go again, another challenge. But once we get over the annoyance, we can then see how this time of perimenopause and menopause genuinely is and can be our most empowering time yet. And yes, the annoying part is that we need to kind of pause, we need to pause and take stock and go, okay, I need to now look at, where have I been taking shortcuts? Where can I improve my life? What do I need to do better? And, we've spoken about that. But then there is also the psycho-spiritual, mental, metaphysical level. Because I genuinely believe that this time of perimenopause and menopause is a time where we are spiritually being prepared for those of us that are willing, because there is a willingness that's necessary, for those of us that are willing and willing to see what's happening, because of course we can also choose to ignore. But for those of us that are willing to see, we need to see the opportunity where, you know how in perimenopause, menopause, there's all this emotional, besides the physical shitstorm, there's the emotional shitstorm. And those of you that have gone through it, that are in it, know exactly what I'm talking about, right? We become teary-eyed all the time, so emotional. We swing between sadness, aggression, and so forth, anger, and all of that. Now, we can make those emotions just about the hormones. We can blame it all on the hormones. We can say, oh, that's just because of the hormones, and I can fix my hormones by taking hormones, and boom, I'm done. But that is not the answer. That's definitely not the way that I see it, experience it, and from the knowledge that I've gathered. But rather, remember, everything is interconnected. And those of you that are in it, you will know the emotions that you feel, the anger, disappointment, sadness, grief that comes up. Is it just random? Right? Random that you can't even say what it is? Of course not. The emotions that arise are about real things that you have chosen or not chosen, unconsciously suppressed. Always. Or, as in my case, I genuinely thought that I had dealt with all of those things that were coming up again. I was like, come on, why are you here again? I thought I had dealt with you. Well, yes, I had, to the degree that was appropriate up until then. And now my body, my spirit was ready to go deeper. And so as much as, my poor me side wanted to go, but I've dealt with all of that and I thought I was done. It's like, well, here it is again. And we can blame it on the hormones, or we can be grateful with a little bit of annoyance, but ultimately grateful that, okay, here all of this is coming up again so that I can really go to the root of it, naked, right? With the hormonal lackings. And now I can really go to the depths of it so that I can resolve it in the depths of my being. Not easy. Certainly far easier said than done, right? Because there's a process. It's not just like, okay, yes, press 3 buttons, boom, out the other side. No, it's a process. It's a back and a forth and a back and a forth. It's a churning. It's a cooking. We're being cooked. We're being roasted. But when we say yes to that, in my experience, there is great magic and great power that can be drawn from that process, right? And yes, it's uncomfortable. And yes, it's annoying, and it's all the things. But by saying yes, we come out the other side renewed and truly empowered. Whereas if we just cover it all up with hormones, we simply don't get to do the deeper work. Now, I'm not saying, okay, stay in your hormonal shitstorm and kind of just, give up, give yourself to it until you're through the other side. Definitely not. I'm saying take action on all levels. Support your body, detox, regenerate, strengthen. Do all those things on a physical level. Make the necessary adjustments, right? On a physical, tangible level. Then look at where in your life are you living out of alignment, especially out of alignment to your next level, right? To where you are moving into as the crone, the wise woman in your life. What is she needing? what is needed to be rectified, healed, addressed, so that she can come into full power, right? Because she cannot come into full power unless this work is done. And when this work is left undone, what inevitably happens is that we skip maturation phases. And what then happens is, like, yes, you may end up as a wonderfully looking 60 or 70-year-old that from the outside looks good, but there's an emptiness of spirit. There is the missing depth, because that is what life is about. We are ultimately here as multidimensional beings. And unless we take account for all parts of ourselves, we're going to miss out. Now, you can absolutely, the beauty of being alive in a human body is that we can choose. We can go, you know what? I choose to not deal with any of that. I choose to skip over it. It is my choice. And therefore, I'm going to take the hormones. I'm going to, not do certain parts of the work because I don't want to. That's your choice. That is your freedom. And I'm all for when we decide not to do certain things, even though we know that they are available to us. Because, definitely not should, but that they are available to us. The problem that I have is that most of us, we are not informed, we are not educated of the full picture, right? The problem that I have is that most doctors, practitioners are either just yapping away at us at why we should go onto hormones. And they cite all the studies and all the papers and all of this and all of that, which, again, they're things that, yes, a lot of stuff looks great on paper, but the reality is different. There's more to it. So that's what I have a problem with. I have an equal problem to those that go, oh, well, absolutely avoid hormones. Absolutely, you don't need to do any of that. Just carry on, just power through it. I have an equal problem with those people. But rather, we need the full picture, and we need to understand, okay, what are the things that I need to look at? Where do I need to put my effort? And in closing, yes, you can. There are proven methods that work extremely well where you can perfectly balance your hormones within 6 weeks to 5 months with natural ways, through nutrition, through detoxification, through regeneration, and last but not least, using peptide bioregulators to support your hormonal system. And of course, also natural phytoestrogens to, again, support your hormonal system. So there's plenty of things that you can do naturally that are extremely successful and with studies behind them. And then you could decide, okay, you know what? I've kind of reached my limits, or this is not the right time to go deeper. I need some support from hormones. And then, that conversation can be had as well. But when we don't know the full story, we actually are not empowered to make empowered choices. We're going to make choices from a point of indoctrination and from fear. And that's just simply something that I can't stand for, right? So I hope that this podcast was informative and that you have a much better idea. Of course, there's still, much to be said. I mean, this was only an hour, so there's so much more to be said. But you're going to have, you're going to walk away from this, I think, having a really good idea of the full story of hormones and hormonal imbalances, and certainly also a good idea of what can be done. And if you need further support, of course, that's what we're here for with our programs, personalized protocols, and also coming up wonderful retreats where really the goal of the retreats for perimenopausal and menopausal women is to give you all the knowledge necessary to go through this period of life, which doesn't end, right? Because it doesn't end with menopause. Menopause is ongoing. And yes, there are definitely things that we need to be aware of so that we can have lasting good health. And just like all things, for the rest of our lives, we're going to have to take certain action. But when we know the full story, we can take rightful action and we can have right results. So that's the difference. And that to me is true empowerment. And we can also choose, well, what are our limits? You know, I'm willing to do this, but I'm not willing to do that. And that's okay. There's no shoulds, there's no better. As long as you decide for yourself, that is true empowerment. Thank you for joining me here. I'm sending you all my love, and I look forward to your comments and, of course, to see you in one of our programs. Until the next podcast, sending you all my love. Bye, everyone.